slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
Everything I do so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it. I got facts over tracks, this and that. Spitting slow, spitting fast. I could roast, I could gas. Think I'm okay at last, but I don't know if that can erase all the past. And the pettiness, a reflection of the emptiness. Hilarious, you think you're worth my time, you're delirious. Mysterious, because you hide behind a fake exterior. Inferior, you know I'll always be a bit superior. Get off of me, this ain't no humble brag. I want you to hear words, you can say them back. I want you to feel free from the chains at last, and to believe in what you got, it was built to last, yeah.
Now that I've been put through hell, I never got anyone's help. I had to do it all myself.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
Gonna learn the consequence of being incompetent. Mental health is confidence, dreams and some modestness. I'm not here to save the day, that's for you to take away. I could play a million mind games, but instead I say something not illogical, something that is topical. Rub it on and watch it go, make yourself unstoppable. Dreams are irresponsible, but they're always possible. If you just believe, you could be so remarkable.
Thoughts in my head, a collage and they spread. I'll be great one day, going off of my meds. No, I'm not giving up, no, I'm not giving in. I will make it to the top, taking off in the wind. I gotta make it, I'm saving every day to taste it. I'm patient, but my mind, it can hardly take it. I'm chasing a dream that I've had for several ages. A vacant, modern kingdom for the taking.
Now that I've been put through hell, I never got anyone's help. I had to do it all myself.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.
Of tectonic plates and reshaping of continents. Volcanic eruptions released huge amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere and intensified the greenhouse effect. The climate of the Jurassic period was generally warmer than the current one by about 5 to 10 degrees Celsius, and the carbon dioxide content in the atmosphere was 4 times higher. The rains were more frequent and heavy compared to the Triassic. Most of the Earth had humid tropical and subtropical climate. Huge areas were covered with lush vegetation, primarily jungles and forests. They consisted mainly of seed ferns and non-flowering woody plants. Let us remind you that plants, unlike animals, were lucky. There is no clear evidence of the flora extinction at the turn of the Triassic and Jura. Thanks to the heat and high humidity, the trees in the forest grew tall and big. Cicades are widespread in the tropics and subtropics. The era of the heyday began. During the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods, the cicades reached the peak of diversity. At the beginning of the Jura, they looked very much like palm trees. Its size puzzled even the famous botanist Carl Linnaeus and caused him to make mistake. In his classification system, the scientist placed cicades in the palm section. Tall ginkgo trees grew in areas with a temperate climate. Ginkgo crowns look like oaks, but the leaves are small and fan-shaped. It is a pity that only one kind of ginkgo tree survived till today. It is Ginkgo biloba. The cicades and ginkgos coexisted with prehistoric conifers. Those trees look like modern yews, pines, and cypresses. During the late Triassic and early Jura, conifers changed rapidly and reached great diversity. During the early Jurassic, the mid-latitude flora of East Asia was dominated by the extinct conifer podozamites, which do not appear to be closely related to any existing conifer family. Its needles were broad, more like leaves, and the tree itself was deciduous. Modern conifers are mostly evergreen, with deciduous being the exception. The lush vegetation sustained the unprecedented flourishing of life, with insects doing especially great. They were lucky. Apparently, there was no extinction of insects at the turn of the Triassic and Jura. Therefore, the forests, fields, and banks of the early Jura rivers were buzzing with all kinds of insects. Imagine predatory dragonflies flying over the water in search of prey, herbivorous beetles swarming in the thickets of plants, and arachnids like spiders and scorpions waiting for their prey. At the turn of the Triassic and Jura, the first butterflies appeared. However, by appearance, they were a pale shadow of colorful, beautiful butterflies we admire in our time. At the same time, some creatures fluttered through the Jurassic forests that looked like modern butterflies, but in fact, they were not. What is it, and how can it be explained? Well, the explanation is an amazing phenomenon: convergent evolution. The creatures that looked like butterflies in the early Jurassic, fluttered like butterflies, and even pollinated plants like butterflies, were actually Calligrammatidae. They belong to a different family of insects, and their closest modern relatives are lacewings. In the Jurassic, Calligrammatidae, of course, could not pollinate flowers, since the flowers almost did not exist in nature. They just appeared, were small and technically unsuited for insects. However, let us remind you that coniferous seed plants had cones with long tubes of nectar and pollen. They attracted the pseudo-butterflies of the Jurassic period. Thus, Calligrammatidae and butterflies are one of the many examples of convergent evolution. In evolutionary biology, convergent evolution is defined as the process whereby distantly related organisms independently evolve similar traits to adapt to similar necessities. That is why different unrelated animals can have a striking resemblance but live in different eras and on continents. For example, tenrecs are a striking example of convergent evolution. From a single colonizing ancestor, tenrecs have evolved into incredible diverse species which resemble moles, shrews, hedgehogs, and even otters. Have a look and find 10 differences. It's not an easy task because tenrecs and hedgehogs are similar, like siblings. In fact, they belong to very distant branches of the genetic tree. One can say that tenrec has more biologically in common with an elephant than with a hedgehog. If you dig deeper, it turns out that indeed they have only an external resemblance. Talking about our Jurassic pseudo-butterflies, we can say that they were strikingly similar to real Lepidoptera. Broad wings, scales, feeding, camouflage. Everything is like that of Lepidoptera. But these are completely different species. Numerous examples of convergent evolution enable us to conclude that evolution takes the shortest, optimal path. And it means that on some fantastic exoplanet with Earth-like conditions, perhaps we would have met strange but rather recognizable life forms. Amphibians at that time were yielding to reptiles. Many species died out. Only salamanders, early frogs, and caecilians, legless worm-like amphibians, still survived. Among the large species, there were still a few brachiopods, which often grew up to 3 meters in length. The record holder was found in Lesotho in Africa. According to its fossilized remains, scientists estimated its size at about 7 meters. Throughout history, only Prionosuchus were large amphibians, but they lived and went extinct in the Permian period. Brachiopods had flat bodies and spatulate heads. The mouth had razor-sharp teeth with which predators could instantly tear apart the victim. Despite proliferation, later their numbers declined. But the number of reptiles grew rapidly. Before the dinosaurs separated into a single group, the overall reptile diversity grew in number and species at an impressive pace. They gradually gained dominance in water, on land, and in the air. Real monsters lived in the warm tropical seas of the Jura, often frightening, but no less amazing and beautiful in their own way. They barely squeezed through the bottleneck of the Triassic-Jurassic extinction and began to gradually grow stronger at the beginning of the Jura. One of the most notable is ichthyosaurs. There were many different types of them. On average, they were quite large, 2 to 4 meters. But due to the favorable environment, as evolution proceeded, individual species reached enormous sizes. The largest known to science, Shonisaurus, grew up to 15 meters. The champion among Shonisaurus is Shastasaurus, boasting up to 21 meters length. Some species of ichthyosaurs looked rather strange. The body is exactly like that of a shark, but the head of a gharial crocodile, with a long, narrow snout. It could be called a bad joke of nature, like a modern platypus. Interesting, ichthyosaurs had very large eyes protected by a ring of bone. According to paleontologists, it might help in night hunting. It was also great for diving because large eyes helped to see at least something. With eyes of 25 centimeters in diameter, Temnodontosaurs could still see at a depth of up to 1,600 meters. 600 meters deep in the water, human eyes are unable to see except complete darkness. It is known that at a depth of 800 to 950 meters, the light intensity is about 1% of noon illumination on the surface. When reptiles got wings back in the Triassic period, Pterosaurus appeared. At the beginning of the Jura, they were still recovering from the mass extinction of species, and the Rhamphorhynchidae family was more or less noticeable. They ate mainly fish. The reptiles reached great diversity on land. Prehistoric turtles in general were similar to modern ones. The land was dominated, of course, by dinosaurs. Paleontologists identified over 900 different genera and over 1,000 species of non-avian dinosaurs alone. In the early Jura, they quickly occupied the free niches after extinction. It is a stereotype that all dinosaurs were huge. In fact, they had different sizes. Some did not exceed the size of chickens, and some grew into huge monsters. Most dinosaurs were carnivorous and hunted for prey. Some dinosaurs were herbaceous. They slowly stomped through the forest, shaking the ground and nibbling at all the vegetation. At the beginning of the Jurassic, about 82.7 to 74.1 million years ago, interesting dinosaurs lived on the territory of modern Zimbabwe. Volcanodons. Discovered in 1969 on a small island in the Kariba Reservoir in Zimbabwe, it was regarded as the earliest known sauropod for decades, and it is still one of the most primitive sauropods that has been discovered. As a quadrupedal, ground-dwelling herbivore, Volcanodon already showed the typical sauropod body plan with column-like legs and a long neck and tail. It is one of the very first dinosaurs found on Zimbabwean soil. The Latin name Volcanodon literally means tooth of the volcano. The fossils were found in a small sandstone between two solidified lava flows. This was enough to get a specific name. Based on the nature of the rock in which the fossils of Volcanodon were found, its habitat, the Batoka Formation, was a hot, sandy desert. Not the most favorable place for life, but still there were islands of vegetation, a few rivers, and even rarer oases. The length of the Volcanodon reached 6.5 meters. Height was up to 2.5 meters. It weighed up to 2.5 tons. Some researchers are more generous with estimates and say it was up to 11 meters in length and up to 3.5 tons in weight. This herbivorous dinosaur moved on 4 legs, but it could rise on 2 legs, for example, to eat branches. Volcanodon, with its relatively small size and ability to move quickly, could well feed itself even in the desert. Due to the sparse vegetation, the Volcanodons were not fussy about the menu. And like any other natural vegetarian in the entire history of evolution, Volcanodon itself often became food for the predatory reptiles of that time. Evidence of this was already received at the time of the first discovery of the remains of Volcanodon. And it all started with a curious riddle that became a puzzle. South African paleontologist Michael Rott discovered several teeth near the pelvic Volcanodon remains. However, the head and neck were not found. The shape of the teeth was rather strange, more characteristic of predators. According to the scientists, the dying Volcanodon could bend over in agony, so that the head was at the level of the pelvis, hence the discovered teeth. Another fact in favor of the theory: a similar pose is sometimes found among dinosaur fossils. Because of such unusual teeth in a herbivorous dinosaur, the researcher mentioned it in the name of the genus. If everything is confirmed, Volcanodon would be considered omnivorous, like modern bears. However, in 1985, another researcher, Michael Cooper, proved that the teeth probably belonged to an unknown theropod, a dinosaur. Most likely, the predator attacked the Volcanodon, but not entirely successfully, so it even broke a couple of teeth on it. But this attack was still fatal to the victim. This is how Volcanodon, ironically and scientifically, got its name in honor of the teeth of its own killer. The killer of that same Volcanodon has never been identified. It could well be the predatory theropod Dilophosaurus, if we conclude that those two genera intersected in space and time. But in order to see the incredible Dilophosaurus, we need to go back in time to another continent, Laurasia, where at that time the outlines of the future continent of North America were already formed. Dilophosaurus lived in what is now Arizona in the United States between 199.3 and 190.8 million years ago. It was an effective predator, fast and incredibly agile. It hunted for herbivorous dinosaurs. The Latin name Dilophosaurus comes from the Greek words for two-crested lizard. It was based on an unusual bone formation on the skull with 2 flat semicircular ridges. It was a decorative organ playing a role in mating games. The closest modern example is the combs of basilisks and iguanas. A red comb of a rooster belongs to the phenomenon of the same nature. The body length of Dilophosaurus reached 7 meters, height up to 2 meters. It weighed up to 400 kilograms. At the beginning of the Jurassic period, these are very impressive dimensions for a predator. Dilophosaurus was the largest predator at the time. In this sense, scientists sometimes refer to it as an early Jurassic T-Rex. As an adult, it was a threat to almost any local animal. However, the Ceratosaurus or Scelidosaurs, who lived at the same time in the territory of Arizona, could be hunted by Dilophosaurus only in pairs or even in groups. The former two were herbivorous, but they could fight back. In any case, this early Jurassic theropod occupied the top of the food pyramid. Judging by the narrow jaws and long teeth, it preferred to hunt relatively small animals, taking advantage of its size and strength. High speed and flexibility allowed to catch even very tiny and fast dinosaurs, such as Scutellosaurus. After analyzing the jaws, scientists concluded that, in the absence of large prey, a significant share of its diet could be fish and other water inhabitants. Sometimes it would eat decaying flesh of dead animals. Coelophysis was a small, slenderly built, ground-dwelling biped carnivore that could grow up to 3 meters, 9.8 feet long, It was one of the earliest known dinosaur genera. The name Coelophysis comes from two Greek words that mean hollow form. The reason for this is simple. Thanks to the hollow bones of the limbs, Coelophysis had an extremely light skeleton. Coelophysis lived in late Triassic and early Jurassic about 208.5 to 109.8 million years ago. According to other estimates, Coelophysis proliferated during a relatively short period, from 228 to 200 million years ago. These reptiles were common in North America, especially in the New Mexico region, as well as in South Africa and Zimbabwe. This slender, squat predator looked small compared to Dilophosaurus. The body length of the Coelophysis reached 3 meters, height up to 1 meter, and weight up to 30 kilograms. The teeth of the Coelophysis are typical of carnivorous dinosaurs, blade-like, curved backwards, sharp with small serrations on both the anterior and posterior edges. Although it was carnivorous, they followed a different hunting strategy than large dinosaurs of the Jurassic period. Representatives of the genus hunted large prey in flocks. The North American valleys in the late Triassic and early Jurassic were mostly deserts. However, there were green oases on the uplands, mountains, hills. On these plateaus or in the mountain forests, flocks of predatory Coelophysis tracked down their prey. Presumably they used special shouts, alerts in their language. It is possible that the Coelophysis developed some primitive tactics and could hunt down a large herbivorous dinosaur. They surrounded the prey and attacked together. Most likely its diet consisted of smaller animals, reptiles, and lizards. Their fossils were often found along with the skeletons of Coelophysis. By the way, here's a curious fact. For a long time, until the early 2000s, Coelophyses were considered cannibals. It was indicated by the remains found at the Ghost Ranch in New Mexico. There, cubs of its own species were found in the stomach of the prehistoric adult Coelophysis. However, later it turned out that the find was misidentified. Later, the cubs were classified as Hesperocicus, the usual prey for the Coelophysis. In general, it is one of the most studied Triassic-Jurassic theropods, all thanks to the many remains found, including several complete skeletons. The Ghost Ranch has a spooky reputation because there is a cemetery of Coelophysis skeletons. What happened there is not entirely clear. While Coelophysis is among the most notable fossils found at Ghost Ranch, the site is rich with examples of many different species of dinosaurs and crocodilians. An even smaller but remarkable dinosaur in the early Jura. The name suggests the African country of Lesotho. Indeed, the first remains of this microsaur were discovered in the high African country of Lesotho. These animals lived in the period of 199.3 to 190.8 million years ago. The body length of the Lesothosaurus reached 2 meters, and this is the maximum. Estimates of height vary greatly, from 40 centimeters to 1 meter and even more. Weight estimates are also in a wide range, from 3 to 10 kilograms. Since we're not talking about a species, but about a whole genus, such an error is normal. Lesothosaurus moved on 2 long, thin legs, which allowed it to develop impressive speed. The 5-fingered forelimbs of Lesothosaurus were small but well developed. From the outside, they may seem like a miniature likeness of human hands. By analogy with our little finger, the 5th finger was poorly developed. With these very hands, he touched and held the plants he was eating. Rhomboid teeth lined up along the jaws of the Lesothosaurus. In front of the upper jaw were 12 teeth, similar to arrowheads. This light structure of the teeth is not very suitable for grinding hard food, but it is quite suitable for cutting soft stems or leaves. The body of the Lesothosaurus was elongated and light, somewhat reminiscent of its ancestors, the archosaurs. which barely stood on 2 legs. A thin, long tail was important for balancing when moving quickly. In general, because of the short skull and elongated body, the Lesothosaurus was somewhat reminiscent of a bipedal lizard that decided to get up on 2 legs and run. This, in fact, can be done by some modern reptiles. Lesothosaurus was a very fast and nimble animal. At the slightest sign of danger, turned on its legs. Did he have enemies? Of course, at least the same Coelophyses. When we mention small living creatures as typical prey of Coelophysis, Lesothosaurus fits into this category. The long-legged Coelophysis could easily keep up with the Lesothosaurus. The latter did not have any means of protection. No serious claws, no armor, no fangs, like Lycorine. What is Lycorine? Finally, a very miniature dinosaur, which is difficult to call a dinosaur, but still very interesting, at least because it puzzled paleontologists with a lot of mysteries. Its very name symbolizes. Lycorinus means wolf face. Fangs were found on the remains of the jaw, although the rest of the teeth testified to herbivory. Lycorinus lived in the early Jurassic period, about 199.6 to 196.5 million years ago, in the territory of the modern Republic of South Africa. The body length of Lycorine reached 1.2 meters, height up to 50 centimeters. He weighed up to 10 kilograms. The Lycorine moved on 2 limbs, which is also characteristic of its relative Heterodontosaurus. Lycorinus had strong, light legs and a long tail for improved balance. Well-developed upper limbs served as convenient manipulators when eating plant foods. In front of the teardrop-shaped head, behind the hard, beak-like end, there were large, sharp fangs. Because of this, he was first mistaken for a descendant of the animal-toothed lizard of the cynodont suborder. Judging by the jaw, the diet of this gourmet dinosaur included everything in a row, both succulent stalks of ferns and horsetails, and more solid food, the roots and bark of trees. When the predators attacked the Lycorinus, they risked being bitten hard. But of course, only camouflage and quick feet could save Lycorinus from hungry predators. Finally, we want to remind you that not all dinosaurs were giants. Many were something in between a chicken and a lizard. For example, a Lesothosaurus, plus it took 100 million years before the appearance of real giants. We already know about large predatory monster Dilophosaurus. To see other amazing large herbivores, we'll go to the southeastern part of the Laurasia continent, the lands of modern China. Here on the territory of the current province of Yunnan, in the period 201.3 to 168.3 million years ago, monsters roamed, named after the place where the remains were found, Dinosaurs. The body length of Dinosaurus reached 13 meters, height up to 4.3 meters. It weighed up to 3 tons. This is incomparably small compared to the giants of the later periods with their tens of tons of weight. But for the early Jura, it is already something. Dinosaurus moved mainly on 4 legs, but spent a significant part of the time on 2, so he could reach the chosen branches on the trees or threateningly expose his forelimbs when a predator approached. These peculiar hands of his were quite large, and, like the legs, were equipped with impressive claws. At the end of the long neck of Dinosaurus was a small, elongated head. Particularly noteworthy are the spoon-shaped teeth, of which there were more than 60 in the jaws. When the jaws were compressed, they were located close to each other. Therefore, they were self-sharpened. This feature is not found in prosauropods like Dinosaurus, but appears in later sauropods like Brachiosaurus. Thus, animals that lived at different times and are not close relatives have a common feature. We again see an example of convergent evolution. If scientists found only the teeth of Dinosaurus, then by its shape, they could mistakenly classify it as a sauropod. Herbivorous Dinosaurs move from one natural pasture to another, not being particularly picky in their food. The unique teeth made it possible not only to effectively pluck the foliage of tall plants, but also to eat undersized ferns with horsetails. Theoretically, Dinosaurs could live in herds for better defense from predators. We see something similar now in the savannas of Africa, when lions hunting herds of buffalo often have to run away when herbivores fight back. At the end of the first stage of the Jurassic period, a cooling trend set in on the planet. Ice started to cover some areas. The icing was not strong enough to hit the mammals. These animals were mostly covered with fur and lived in burrows. No wonder that cold temperatures hurt dinosaurs who like to live in a warm climate. As we can see from the example of the Coelophysis, not all species survive colder weather. Of course, much more amazing reptile species lived in the early Jura. We know only about a small part from the crumbs of the remains that have been preserved.